Welcome once again to another edition of The Schmidt Show here on News Radio 1029 KARN. I am your host, Brad Schmidt. Thanks for joining me. We're glad you're here, ready to spend another afternoon with us as we talk about all of the very, very important things going on today. Of course, the discussion yesterday revolved largely around President Trump's legal issues and the court case, jury selection in New York City. Today, it looks like the big news of the day is this Mayorkas impeachment trial in the Senate, which we'll get to. We'll talk a little bit about this. The reality of this situation is this is more theater and drama that's not really going to accomplish anything no matter what happens. So there's that. We'll maybe get into that discussion today as well. So we'll talk about some of those things. Another one that I brought up yesterday that we never had time to get to was there is, I believe it's a court case that is being brought forth, or it's already been brought forth, and a judge is hearing arguments about whether or not they should release the school shooter's writings, the Covenant School shooting in March of last year. The transgender individual that shot up the school had left behind a bunch of writings, journals, and things like that, and manifesto and whatnot. And there's a judge in Nashville hearing arguments as to whether or not those documents and those writings should be released or not. So I want to try to get to that today and talk a little bit about that. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on it, because some of the arguments against releasing them, of course, revolve around the potential for further victimization of the families and so on. But a gun rights group, a law enforcement nonprofit group, a state senator, several news outlets have all sued in an attempt to force the release of this information. So I think that's one to talk about. I want to hear your thoughts on it. I want to hear what you think. Should it be released or not? So we'll get into that. Another story that is kind of on my radar, we've been hearing a lot about in the local news the last couple of days, this shooting in Wynn. The headline, of course, today is that the Arkansas State Police have made some arrests in the Wynn, what they're calling the Wynn mass shooting. But I think we need to be honest about this, and we need to stop mislabeling this as a mass shooting. I mean, think about that. If I say, hey, there was a mass shooting in Little Rock today, what would you think? What would your first belief or first conclusion be? What would the first thing you would leap to as, here's what I hear when I hear the words mass shooting? It probably wouldn't be a gang of thugs at a party that allow an altercation to escalate into a gunfight. Most people, when we hear mass shooting, we think, oh, a lone gunman went into a school, went into a place of business where they used to work and got fired, something like that, and shot up the place. And they usually end in suicide. They usually end in the police showing up, kind of like what we saw in Nashville as we talk about mass shootings. And so this attempt by whether it's the media or someone else or the various agencies that report on these things and drop press releases to the news agencies, this is not a mass shooting. It was not. What happened in Wynn was not a mass shooting. Now, maybe by the technical definition, according to the FBI, 4 victims, blah, 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 whatever, maybe it is a mass shooting in according to that definition. But it is certainly a misleading statement to say, oh, another mass shooting happened. This was a group of idiot thugs hanging out at a party. They got into some stupid altercation over something and decided to turn that altercation into a gunfight by a bunch of idiots that don't understand the consequences of randomly shooting into a crowd. And the inevitable the inevitable consequence of those kinds of idiots getting together and engaging in that kind of behavior happened. Bunch of people got shot. Somebody died. Because that's what happens when idiot thugs get a bunch of guns and get together, and the booze and the drugs flow freely. That's what happens. Idiot thugs do stupid idiot thug stuff. And we need to stop calling this a mass shooting, because it wasn't. Not in the sense of mass shooting as the average citizen understands. But this is an attempt, as always, to make this out to be an issue about guns. That it was the guns that were the problem. If there was not any guns on the street, there wouldn't be all of these mass shootings. Well, that's maybe true, but if there wasn't a bunch of idiot thugs doing idiot thug stuff, people wouldn't be getting shot in Wynne, Arkansas either. So do we take the guns off the street, or do we take the idiot thugs off the street? Because the DAs and the various attorneys and prosecutors around not just this state, but around big blue cities everywhere, all seem to think that more idiot thugs on the street is a good thing. And here's the funny thing about that. The more idiot thugs you have on the streets, the more illegal guns you usually end up with on the streets as well. Because it's not a gun problem. It's an idiot thug problem. Period. 501-403-KRN, 501-403-5276. Texter says 4 victims, whatever. You really said that. No, good grief. Are you not listening? That's the FBI's definition of a mass shooting is at least 4 victims. If I said or whatever, it's because there's other things that go along with it to make them be able to clarify it or to classify it, as a mass shooting. I don't... Anyway, 501-403-KRN, 501-403-5276. Texter says, I don't think DA stands for what you think it does in this story. Maybe. Typically, DA stands for district attorney, but I like the inference there. 501-403-KRN, 501-403-5276. So we'll get into that discussion today as well. Another one I want to ask about, Mayor Frank Scott apparently has put out, according to our news partner KARK, has created a map for minority-owned businesses as a part of the Opportunity Little Rock initiative, and Opportunity Unity is all capitalized. So I'm curious about this one. I mean, how many people, when you do business in your community, how many of you consider the race of the business owner as a reason for doing business? Because that is not something that has ever crossed my mind. I have a thing that needs done. I find a person on Google or YouTube or Facebook or whatever other social media that has good reviews, and I reach out to them and I have them do some work. I needed a person to handle, spraying for bugs and putting fertilizer and stuff down on my lawn. And I was recommended Liberty Pest, Alan over at Liberty Pest. And so I reached out to Alan, and Alan has done a great job for me in taking care of my lawn and making sure that I've got bugs sprayed and all that kind of stuff around my house. I didn't once consider whether Alan was white or black or Asian or some other minority. I didn't once consider whether or not his business was owned by a woman He was just the guy that I reached out to because he had good reviews and came highly recommended. I needed some detail work done on my car when I sold it about a year ago. And someone was recommended to me. And so I reached out to them and they came and detailed my car. I never once thought about their race or their gender or ethnicity or any of that. So there's part of this that feels a little bit inappropriate. That the city themselves, that the mayor's office is putting out a map about here's some businesses that you can shop at based on race and ethnicity of the business owner. That seems a little bit inappropriate coming from a government. Now, a private industry that says, hey, we're an organization, a nonprofit that wants to support minority-owned businesses or whatever, fine, so be it. I mean, it's your nonprofit, whatever, it's your organization. I don't care really what you do with it. But it seems somewhat inappropriate coming from the mayor's office. So we'll get into that and a few other things, the Mayorkas impeachment trial, which we mentioned already, and a whole lot more as we continue with the Schmidt Show next on News Radio 102.9 KARN and the KARN app.